Although the name Nintendo didn't become super well known in the Anglosphere until the mid-1980s, their history actually goes back a whole century before Mario became a worldwide phenomenon. Nintendo started as a small Kyoto-based business in 1989, where it made Hanafuda, a type of Japanese playing cards. They quickly found success, and in fact, the business did so well that Nintendo pretty much only made playing cards until the mid-1960s, when the company diversified into fields like toys, taxis, instant noodles, and even hourly rate hotels. But these ventures didn't go so well for Nintendo. And by this time, folks in Japan weren't really buying playing cards much anymore. So the company was suddenly in dire financial straits until employee Gunpei Yokoi used his engineering background to develop a popular line of electronic toys, including light guns in the early 1970s that could be considered the forerunners of the NES Zapper that's responsible for the deaths of millions of digital ducks. You can learn more about light guns in this episode. But why make light guns if you don't make a game console? Well, some of Nintendo's early light guns were used in game systems from other manufacturers, because Nintendo wouldn't release its own console until 1977, the simply titled Color TV game that was only marketed in Japan. Unlike most later systems, the Color TV game didn't use cartridges, but instead came in several variations that featured different games built in. And that wasn't the only primitive thing about it. The first version didn't even have true controllers. Instead, players controlled the game by fiddling with dials on the console itself, making gameplay a little awkward. But in spite of these limitations, the Color TV game did fairly well. Though Nintendo's first real hit in the video game world came after Yokoi sat beside a passenger on a train who was fiddling with a calculator to pass the time. Suddenly he thought, hey, why can't people cure their boredom with handheld games instead? With that, the Game & Watch was born in 1980, a line of simple LCD games with clocks built in, hence the name. Although each Game & Watch model only included one game due to their use of segment displays that could only show a limited number of images, it sold over 43 million units worldwide before it was discontinued in 1991. Nintendo was also developing arcade games during this time, including the original Donkey Kong and Mario Bros. Released in 1981 and 83 respectively. But home consoles continued to gain popularity during the early 80s, so Nintendo came out with the Family Computer, or Famicom, in 1983. This was their first console that resembles what we're used to today, with wired controllers and a cartridge system that allowed it to play lots of different games. The Famicom sold very well, leading Nintendo to look at releasing it in the United States. But by this time, the infamous video game crash of 1983 had happened, a huge downturn in the video game industry that was caused in large part by the market being flooded with very poor quality games and consumer confusion that stemmed from dishonest box art and inconsistencies in the game experience between consoles, even when playing the same game. So Nintendo redesigned the Famicom into the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, envisioning it as a single ecosystem using proprietary terms like control deck and game pack instead of console or video game cartridge. Nintendo also introduced the Seal of Quality at this time to show that NES games had passed Nintendo quality control in an attempt to convince consumers they were only licensing worthwhile games for their console, unlike competitors like Atari. The NES finally made it to market in 1986 and was a runaway hit, trouncing its competitors with games like Super Mario Bros., Metroid, and The Legend of Zelda, which became such enduring franchises that they continue to this very day. So successful was the NES that the company rolled out Nintendo Power Magazine 2 years later, which served to hype upcoming titles and hardware. But Nintendo didn't forget about the handheld market, and Yokoi took his handheld game ideas to the next level when he designed the Game Boy, released in 1989. Although it was rather simple, featuring a black and white, non-backlit screen with a low 160 by 144 resolution, it was inexpensive and durable, allowing it to beat out more advanced rival handhelds like the Sega Game Gear. With that, the stage was set for a console war that would rage on for many more years. But right now, we're out of time, so stay tuned for part 2 of our history of Nintendo, where we have a look at the Nintendo-Sega conflict of the 1990s, ultra-rare Charizard cards, and 3D without dorky glasses. Speaking of being out of time, FreshBooks! Are you a freelancer, small business owner? Well, it can be very rewarding, but it can also be a lot of work keeping track of boring stuff like accounting. With FreshBooks, you can make all of that stuff easier and faster, so you can spend your time making money instead of spending your time counting it. And they've got an all-new version of their cloud accounting software. It's been redesigned for the way you work, and it's the simplest, easiest way to be more productive, more organized, and get paid more quickly. You can create and send professional-looking invoices in less than 30 seconds. You can see when your client has seen your invoice and put an end to the guessing games, and you can try it out for nothing for 30 days by heading to the link in the video description, freshbooks.com/techquickie. Then enter TechQuickie in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, dislike, leave a comment with suggestions for future videos. Check out some other video on one of our other channels up here, and don't forget to subscribe.